Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. The topic today is Domino Leap, and we'll just run through some quick slides here and then get right to Marty. Marty is from HCL, and we've had Marty on before, and thanks for coming back again. So once the presentation is done, we'll have our question and answer period as well. Just very quickly, thank you to OpenNTF sponsors, which is HCL and Prominic. And they continue to support us going forward, and we're very thankful for their help. And just a reminder that we are all part of the Domino community. I said it at CollabSphere going back a couple of months ago now. Anybody who's ever downloaded anything or made a comment or shared anything on OpenNTF, we're all part of the same community. And we learn from each other, whether you're new to the community or been around for a long time. I've been around for a long time, and there's still things that I learned. In fact, something earlier this week, a new setting in Lotus script in Domino 12.01 that I wasn't aware of. So yeah, we're all constantly learning and sharing, and encourage you to get involved. And we'll have a link here in a second that shows you how to get involved. Wanted to announce an initiative that we started. In fact, it was announced at CollabSphere, and it's running through the whole balance of 2023. We call it the Blogathon, but it's basically getting back to sharing what we know and contributing things into the community. And so the idea is that if you've got something that you'd like to share, just post it up. If you don't have a place to post it, let us know, and we can post it on your behalf on the OpenNTF blog. We use the example of Notes in 9. David Leedy started Notes in 9, I want to say 14 years ago, 12 years ago, and just decided on his own to start creating videos about X pages, and it grew into a massive brand in our community. So feel free to take that step, and don't be afraid of what might happen. It could turn into something really awesome. We are sharing all those blog posts on the OpenNTF Discord server, or links to the blog posts. And also they're being featured on Collaboration today. Roberto is on our call today, and he's one of the moderators of Collaboration today. So if you don't know what those are, by all means, jump into the Discord server, and we can help answer those questions. And once you make a contribution, we have an OpenNTF badge for you that you can put on your LinkedIn or wherever else you'd like to show your badges. And the last note here about consideration as an HCL ambassador, sharing with the community is what being an HCL ambassador is all about. And if you don't know what that is, there is a blog post announcing the Blogathon on the OpenNTF homepage. So just head over to openntf.org and find that blog post, and it'll give you more details on what's going on. But by all means, we encourage everybody to share what they know, and just help each other out. We'll learn from each other. This is a link for our Discord server. We also have a link on the OpenNTF homepage, but a quick shot of this QR code will take you to the Discord server, and that's where we chat regularly throughout the day. There's lots of different channels that you can go in and answer questions or ask questions, but it's also the place to get to the Blogathon links to see what other people are sharing with the community. Quick note about upcoming events. Next week, we have our regularly scheduled monthly OpenNTF Admin Repair Cafe. It's next Thursday at this time slot. And for those of you that don't know what a repair cafe is, it's essentially an opportunity to meet in a live chat room and ask your questions and just have an open discussion, or again, be able to contribute. So by all means, jump in there and check it out. And we're just trying to build an opportunity for a regular place where people can essentially sit down and have a coffee with one another and just chat about the different topics of the day. Other things coming up, the Let's Connect Nordic user group. So this has been essentially a reboot of the user group in the Nordic countries. So this year, it's going to be in Copenhagen and Stockholm in November. And I know they're working really hard on a good list of speakers. I also know that they just this week announced the different venues that they're going to be hosting. So this is in person in Copenhagen and Stockholm. The plan is next year to host in Oslo, and it's escaping me really quickly. But basically, it's Norway and Finland next year. And Engage 2024 is Theo's announced that it's going to be in Antwerp, April 22nd and 24th. So mark your calendars for that. And quickly, next webinar is going to be on same time. We've got some folks lined up for that. And then in December, we've, for the last couple of years, done a holiday community gathering. So again, it's just a raise a glass together on an online chat, and there'll be more information coming out about that shortly. Okay, reminder for everybody asking questions, we want to make sure that the questions and answers are recorded in the video. So by all means, use the GoToWebinar questions pane to ask your question, but we're going to hold those for the end of the session, and then we'll ask them all and answer them all together. Yes, this is being recorded, and yes, it's being posted on YouTube, and all of our links to all of our presentations are available on the webinars page on the OpenNTF homepage. So please keep your questions focused to the topic at hand. If you've got other questions, that's what we've got Discord for. Please jump over there and ask your questions there if it's not related to something to do with Leap today. Okay, with that, let me jump out of here and we'll make Marty the presenter. Right there. Okay, Marty, that should be you. I'm just going to click OK and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Graham. I trust everybody can see my screen, which has got a lot on it right now.
Yep, and we see the PowerPoint deck.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So I'm going to give you my view of the world, of what's going on with Leap and Domino Leap. We'll get down into some nitty-gritty details and features. We'll also talk a little bit about strategy. Boy, I look so much younger there. So I'm going to do a brief introduction on Leap. I can't assume that everybody knows what Leap is on the call. And then I'm going to focus on what's new. We'll give a little bit of focus to what's next, and then we'll summarize. All right, and of course, we'll do some demos in there as well. So the space that Leap is going after is what we call citizen developers. You can think of these as non-technical developers, business developers. And I often say, well, IT doesn't like hard. They appreciate citizen development as well. Well, that's very true. So the focus is to be able to do things quick and easily, let business users innovate without having to get IT involved. And the types of apps, I mean, it's not a, build anything with Leap sort of product. It's, you build web forms, and you can build workflows. You can do some reporting on the data you collect and some analysis. So, approval applications, workflows, collecting information, surveys, that sort of thing, they're well suited for the product. And the last point here is that a focus of the product is to make it easy for IT to deploy for business users in a safe and governed way. So, set it up for business users or non-technical users in a way that they can't hurt themselves or the company. So just quickly, some highlights of the product. It's browser-based. You come in and, like many of these products, you have a canvas. You've got a palette of widgets, properties, and that sort of thing. Very, 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 very straightforward, and you can set validation logic on fields in a number of different ways, depending on the field type. You can set it to being required. This is just all simple stuff, very intuitive. You've got rules, a rules editor, so you can make your applications dynamic. So if there's different sections that you want to show and hide based on answers to certain questions, you can do that. Maybe there's a piece of the form that's required because you answered a question a certain way, you can do that. The apps you build, they're automatically responsive, and you have control over the breakpoints and even things like, I want to set a rule that says, okay, when we get to a mobile form factor, drop some pictures as an example. And you've got workflows, the ability to do workflow stages. You can assign who gets access to the form in each one of the stages, who gets notified. You've got logic to determine, does it go to approver 2 or is it just approver 1 enough? Some branching logic. And you have reminder notifications as well. So there's a lot to that. You know, on the theme of giving IT what they need to be comfortable deploying this to business users without it blowing up in their face. I think about this in 3 different areas. There's the idea of controls. When you deploy this as an IT person for business users, you make the determination how data is managed. You know, in the case of Domino Leap, it's managed with Domino. You make the decision on how users authenticate into the product, as well as how users of the apps they build authenticate into those apps. You know, in the case of Domino Leap, it's Domino. You can set the rules whether or not you want to allow anonymous or external use. You can do safeguards against certain file types, sizes. You can whitelist, you know, service domains. So you get all kinds of different controls. New, which we'll focus on a little bit in this presentation, is you now have, as an IT administrator, visibility into what's going on the server. So you've got statistics on all the different apps, who's building them, etc. And then the last role we see for IT is you want to add some value that makes it, you know, a good tool for your users. You want to give them themes, maybe templates, custom widgets, which we'll talk about here. You want to give them access to data, which could be helpful, etc. So the product has been deployed at scale with business users very successfully. One story that we've been talking about quite a bit is Lufthansa. They've deployed it to all business users in the organization, and they found the results just to be tremendous, and they've been able to manage this and support all the users on a single server, which is amazing. So let's get into some more specifics. So, you know, I'm just saying Leap here, but it runs on essentially 2 different platforms. So a Java application server, or it runs in Domino, which has got a Java application server in it. So there's Domino Leap and there's Leap, right? So in the past, Leap is run on WebSphere, and it could use DB2 or Oracle, and of course, Domino Leap runs on Domino, and Domino does everything, right? You don't need a database, you don't need a directory, it's all there. We recently added Leap can run on Kubernetes, and we also added Leap can run with Postgres. So what this means is that you can go to you know, AWS, GCP, or perhaps Azure Cloud, and you can use their native Kubernetes service. You can use their native Postgres services, and you can deploy it there, right? You don't have to involve you know, other licenses or other software products in the mix. So what we're doing with Leap is moving totally towards this cloud Kubernetes deployment model. You know, whether you're on you know, one of the public clouds, whether you're doing something private with OpenShift or whatever, that's the model that we're going towards, and we're getting away from you know, having IBM in the box and you know, traditional WebSphere style deployments. We'll continue to support DB2 as an option, of course, and of course we'll Domino forever, right? It is it's you know, a single team, and it's the same code running on different platforms, right? 99% of the UI and the functionality is the same, right? It's the same APIs for data access. It's the same JavaScript API. It's the same API for app management between the 2 different platforms. There are a few differences though. In Domino Leap, you've got services that are available for going against Domino data, going against the Domino directory, you know, which makes total sense. You've got the ability in Leap, you know, looking at it the other way, you've got the ability to tag and categorize your apps. There's been some discussion about introducing that to Domino Leap. And then flipping back to what does Domino Leap have that Leap doesn't? Well, there's reminder notifications in Domino Leap. We haven't gotten around to putting those in Leap yet. But the efforts are with the dev team is to pull these, you know, as close as we can together, so that we're able to drop new releases for both at the same time. And we've been doing a pretty good job with this. I mean, the last version of Domino Leap came out in August, and the last version of Leap came out in August. So we've closed the gap to a matter of weeks, and we hope to continue to close that gap. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about will apply to both. Some will apply just to Leap, right? But internally, we just look at it. It's one code base that runs on different platforms. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how we make the products available. So Leap is now part of VoltMX and MX Go, right? And Leap is not sold standalone anymore. So the strategy at HCL is that we have a single low-code platform called VoltMX, which addresses citizen development up through professional development, right? And because VoltMX is part of MX Go, Leap is part of that as well. With MX Go customers, we're giving you the choice. You can use either Domino, Leap, or Leap. So the entitlement is there for either one of them. And then over time, what we're doing is we're building some integration between Leap and other elements of MX. All right, so this is an ongoing journey to kind of bring these products closer and closer together. All right. And of course, Domino Leap continues to be sold as an add-on to Domino. And I'm told that with Domino 14, there'll be a limited entitlement to Domino Leap, a couple of apps, and it'll be there in F&O for you to download and try out, even if you haven't purchased Domino Leap as an add-in. All right, so let's get into what's new. So I talked a little bit about this already. So in April, with Leap 932, we introduced Leap in a container, an Open Liberty container with a Helm chart. And the way you deploy this now is you use Helm to essentially say, here's the image in the chart, and then you deploy that to your Kubernetes environment. What's interesting about this is if you're a customer and you have been in the past running it on WebSphere, now we're saying, here's the container. The container is the product. The container has got Open Liberty in it. We manage and update the container. So we're taking you out of the business of having to manage WebSphere, right? We have to provide frequent updates to make sure that if there are any issues with the Open Liberty piece that's in there, we're supporting that those updates are there, and then we're supporting you, and we're doing these sort of vulnerability scans frequently that allow us to keep on top of that. So that's kind of a major shift in terms of how things get supported. Postgres is now an option. So if you're a traditional deploy or if you're a Kubernetes deploy, either can use Postgres, and this gives you a much lower cost option than going out and buying an Oracle or DB2 license. All right. Other things that are new. So this came out in May with Domino Leap 111. And I'm sure if everybody here noticed it, so we'll talk a little bit about it. So the idea is that attachments stay in context with rich text. And so this will be my, my first demo. So let's start in Notes. And what I have here is a doc library, right? And so I'm gonna open up this document in the doc library, and you can see that I've just got a rich text field, and there's attachments in the context of this article. And this is very typical of what you would do in Notes in rich text. I mean, there's a lot of meaning of how these attachments fall into that context. Now, if I flip over to Leap, let's take a look at this application. I've got a view into what we're looking at over here. So all these documents here are listed here, right? And as I click on one of these, you're going to see the document shown below in a rich text field. So in this case, this is the custom themes that I'm showing you there. And it's the same thing on the right. Right, so you can see that the context is preserved for that. Right. Now, if I were to take that Domino rich text and populate an HTML field with that, you get the same sort of thing. So the way I did that was there's a table here, and on the table select, what I'm doing is just getting the doc ID for that selected document in the view, and then on the doc ID here, then I'm actually calling the service to go ahead and get that document, and then I'm displaying it down here, right, in this rich text field, and then I'm also passing the subject of the document over here. And you could have other metadata fields there that you wanted to surface as well. But this gives you a way to create a web application and take advantage of the rich text is there, and the preserve that context, which is valuable. Very important. Let's go on. The admin dashboard. So it's been very difficult as an administrator in the past to figure out, okay, who's building what, how many applications are out there, etc. Now you have this, and this will be my second demo. And for this one, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to let's go over to the Leap sandbox. This is a public sandbox, and I happen to be the administrator. And because I'm the administrator, I have this tab over here, right? And if I click on that tab, I can see that there's close to 5,000 applications out there. About 4,000 are running. Some have not yet been deployed. I can go through and see the high record counts. I can look at who's creating each one of these things. I can launch the app because I'm the administrator. I can take a look at it. I can export the application. Perhaps somebody left the company and I need to export this and do something with it, or maybe they had some issues with it. I can get information about the app, all the different forums in it, the record counts, etc. So great visibility into what's going on. I can also export this data to a spreadsheet, and there's a REST API to get this data as well. And you can set the frequency of how often this is collected through a configuration if you want to, right? So that's the Leap dashboard. This is I'm actually running Leap in a Docker container here on my desktop, and I'm also admin on my own Docker container, so you can see the same thing here. So I got close to 250 applications on my laptop. So that's the admin dashboard. All right. Let's talk about the next topic, which is custom widgets. So we introduced a new API in August for both Leap and Domino Leap, and it lets you add your own widgets to the palette. Now, there's a number of reasons why you might want to do this. One is maybe there's some functionality you want to add there, right? Make it available to all your users. Another might be maybe you've got a certain look that you have in all your digital properties, and you want that to be consistent with you want Leap to be consistent with it, right? And this is actually one of the use cases that drove us doing this. There was a large customer in Europe that wanted to use Leap, that is using Leap for citizen-facing applications, and they wanted their widgets, their design library to be used as opposed to our out-of-the-box widgets. And the reason they wanted that is because that's their look. It's across all their digital properties. So our text box is different than their text box. Their radio, group is different than ours, etc. So we allow them to essentially declare all their custom web components as widgets in Leap, and users can use those like they're out-of-the-box widgets. They show up on the palette. You put them on the canvas. You see them in a kind of a WYSIWYG mode. You can apply rules to them, etc. So let's take a look at this. So I'm going to go back over to my Domino Leap. Let's go over to Manage. And let's just say New Application. I'm going to say Test. It's a great name for a demo application. And you can see here I've got some widgets on my page which are different than your widgets, right? So I've got a page stepper, a gauge widget, page navigation, and then I've got the other ones. Let me start by, I'm going to put a numeric slider on the canvas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, let's say, at 0, and we'll end at 100. Right? I'll stretch that across. And then I'm going to come up here and let's say, let's go put this gauge widget up here. Well, that looks cool. And you notice that it's WYSIWYG, and I've got properties over here, so I can say this is a custom widget. It shows up over there. I can set other properties. I've got events for this. So if I wanted to say on show item, set value. And then let's say business object, and I'll hit control space, numeric slider, get value. All right. And then I'll preview that. Oh. What happened to my code? Did I not type that in? Did I type that in on the page by accident? No, let's try that one more time. So the gauge on show. So item. I like to live dangerously, always doing a live demo in a webinar. And then we'll say get value. All right, we'll click save and then preview this. Did it save that or kick that out? Let's say let's say BO. And let's give it a default value of something. Okay, that's not working for me. Let's go look at my backup demo here. So this is an example that was built previously. So the point here is that there's the gauge, and I've got these JavaScript methods for doing things with the gauge. So I can change the label, change the title, increment this a few times, change the stroke color, change the font color. So all these different JavaScript methods. So if I were to come in here and look at this example. So we'll look at the stroke color as an example. So this on click, what it's doing is page and then the gauge itself, set the stroke color in blue, right? And then set the scale. So there are these functions, set the scale. So page the Acme set the scale. So how was this widget? How was it created? So let's take a look at how this is done. So there are 2 lines of HTML that have been added to. We'll come over here. So this is the Volt config settings, right? And so there's a new setting called runtime resources. Right now, if I were to open this up, you notice I had a few widgets on the palette, and these are just link and script tags for the different widgets that are there. It's kind of small and hard to read, so I took the ones for the gauge and put it right here. And essentially, there's a CSS file and a JavaScript file, right? So if I look at the JavaScript file, there's a section in the JavaScript file which is a JSON object. And what this is doing is it's defining how this widget will work in Leap, right? So what's the ID of it, the label, description, the data type. It could be a display widget, it could be a data widget. Did you want it on the form palette, the app page palette? What's the CSS class for the icon on the widget itself? And then you get into properties, what you can set. So the explanation text, the poster, etc., the scale, stroke color. So you define all this, and then there are, the pieces that actually, define the widget itself. So the JavaScript, which generates the markup code for the widget itself. And at the very end, you've got Nitro register widget, then Acme gauge widget. So there's the JSON declaration for how it works in Leap. There's the widget code itself, and then there's this registration. And then there's also this ability to specify what you want to expose with the Leap JavaScript API. So there's this section here, get JavaScript API facade. And you've got all the different functions here. So set title, set poster, set scale, set text color, set stroke color. So we saw this in the demo. These events, or I should say these functions then become part of the JavaScript that you can use against the events in the app. So some real interesting stuff that you can do. And it's an opportunity for developers to build things, to put it into the Leap marketplace and make them available to other customers. I think it's a great opportunity for OpenNTF. The other tag here, of course, is CSS. And the CSS just goes along with the markup which is generated. All right. So, it's not a non-technical user, but it's not rocket science to be able to build something like this. And then if you wanted to, I don't know, put a page stepper on here as an example, and then you could do, I don't know, page navigation, and then you can add another page. Then we could put, I don't know, maybe a yes, no there, and then we'll put page navigation there as well. Not that one, we'll go with the this one here, put that up there, and then we'll put a navigation because we need to get back, and then we can preview this. See, so it knows that I have 2 pages, right? And it knows that I didn't give the second page a name. So it's just new page. So if I go over here, it's gonna say, okay, you're at the end. So this kind of assumes that you're going through, page by page in a stepwise fashion, that page stepper. So another example of a custom widget, but really interesting opportunities to extend the functionality of the product. So let's move on. Yeah, so this is, I just talked about this. So you've got either the Vault config or in Leap itself, there's a properties file, and you just declare this is an entry of the runtime resources, and it's the HTML tags that pull in the JavaScript and CSS. And on startup, just looks at that and says, okay, it's part of the palette. It's part of the runtime as well. And there's some pretty good documentation on all this, as well as some examples that you can take and play with. All right, and there's a lot more that we're going to do in this area going forward. In future releases, we're going to see all kinds of new custom widgets that we're introducing. Another interesting feature which was introduced in August is inline CSS capability on the style tab. So let's go over here and take a look at this. Look at that one. Go over to this app. And we'll go over to the style tab. And here you can see this CSS is commented out. You know, if I were to delete that in this, no, it's not. And it gives you the ability to, I don't know, if you want to say 33, put a big number in there, and you know exactly what's changing. You can change the color, do whatever you want. So the idea here is that you could play with some CSS, and this is saved as part of the app. It applies to everything in the app, and gives you an easy way to kind of override some things within the product. All right. All right, so that's the inline CSS. This is kind of another neat little feature that has been added. Not a big thing, but incredibly useful. And we call it application notes. So if you go into your apps now, so this app that I'm in, and come over here to the settings tab, you see application notes. So it's a rich text field, and you can put in whatever information you want. So, perhaps, as you evolve the application, you want to keep notes on what's going on, whether who did what, when, etc. You can put as much information as you want in there. So something simple, which is quite useful. So let's move on with what's next. So currently we're working on a web UI for admin config. Now this is going to be on the Leap Kubernetes side. So if you think about it, you have a config client today with Domino Leap. It's called Notes. We were just in it. And you have the ability to open up that config.nsf in Notes and set things for admin purposes. When we go to Kubernetes, you really don't have access to the file system, or at least you don't have access to the file system conveniently. So what we have to do is we have to provide a web UI into changing certain things. All right, so we're doing this. All right. Another thing that we're doing is with Leap integration with Foundry, because they're in the box together, and we want to build integration between these. Today, Leap can consume REST services. You've got the ability to put REST endpoints into Leap and use them to either populate drop-downs, tables, whatever. Well, Foundry's got the ability to connect all kinds of different things: CRM systems, relational database systems, etc. And Foundry can expose those connections as a simple REST endpoint which communicates JSON, which makes it very easy for Leap to have a conversation between Foundry, which becomes a broker to other organizational sources for customer information, product information, etc. The problem is this conversation between Leap and Foundry for data integration. It needs to happen over the internet, right? But it needs to be secure. So we're doing some work so that when the Leap user logs in, you've got this option to essentially do an SSO between the Leap user and Foundry so that the Leap user has a Foundry token and then can securely communicate with Foundry for purposes of these integration services, right? So that's a piece of work that is in process right now. There's another interesting piece of work, which is today in the product, if I come in here, you can go into services and you can add a service and say, I want to select a service from a URL. And you can put in any URL. And if you're a business user, this is awfully confusing. It's like get, post, puts, what are those? What's a JSON payload? What's a request header? I don't know what those are. But if you're a business user, something like this is pretty simple. Oh, I see, I can connect to Salesforce, add an account, contacts, etc. I can go to this relational database and I can add a customer, an order, list some orders, etc. That's the level that's convenient for a business user. And here's the information on orders. List the orders. That's the one I get. I'm going to put it into a table, or maybe I want to take the order numbers and put them into a dropdown. So the work we're doing is on the admin side. We're going to let admins define service definitions via URL, and the admin will decide which service catalog they appear in Leap. Right, so the admin can create, let's say, some sort of service from a URL, and it shows up like this, like we just saw with Salesforce. What that does is it allows the admin to create these catalog entries, which could emanate from Foundry. But the other thing is they could also come from the Domino REST APIs. So an admin could configure different things that are coming from different Domino sources via the REST APIs, and they can kind of tightly, put these together in a way that are very consumable to business users. So, define them once and use by many. And there's an additional piece here where the admin is able to set who's able to see and use these services. Right, so there may be some services that only the marketing organization can see. Maybe there's some others that only the finance organization can see. So the role of the Leap admin kind of expands in the future here. And the idea is for them to curate and make external data sources available to users in a controlled way. All right, let's go on with this here. And then there's Leap on Cloud, all right? So the target of this are VoltMX customers who want HCL to host their Leap entitlement. So today, if you buy MX or MX Go, you're entitled to Leap. A lot of those customers, they don't want to run it. Many of the MX customers, they're running on the MX Cloud. This becomes something that allows them to take advantage of that Leap entitlement. We fully manage it. It's a single tenant. The authentication, through the company directory will support OIDC. We'll have a 99.9 SLA, and this will be based on Leap 935, which is targeted for February. So that version will have the Leap admin config and hopefully the other pieces that we talked about. And it will be a Kubernetes Postgres, under the covers. The customer won't necessarily know or care, but the way we provision it and run it, it will be through Kubernetes and Postgres. In this case, it'll actually run on GCP, but you could just as well run it on AWS or Azure as well. And they'll have this option of the SSO between Foundry and Leap as well. All right. So, you know, in terms of the future, what we're looking at right now, the next release of Leap and Domino Leap is just right around the corner. So November 2nd and Domino and December 7th. This release, next release, it's not going to have much in it. There's some UI improvements and workflow. There's a bunch of bug fixes that we're addressing. There's also some accessibility issues that we're addressing. But in large, it's, you know, it's not a feature. It's not really a feature release period. The next turn of the crank, we're looking at February 8th and 29th. And what I have in blue there is what's on tap for that next release. All right, so I talked about the web-based config, the admin defining service definitions from URL, the Foundry integration. Also, we're going to add a new service which allows you to just simply send an email, you know, untied to workflow action. So if you just want to button in your form to say send an email to this person, you could do it, and then we'll do Leap on Cloud. Now, beyond that, we've got a bunch of other things which we're doing. There are some changes that we want to make to create app from spreadsheets. We need to take advantage of the fact that app pages are there. So the app that you create from a spreadsheet should not only just be a form, it should be a form with an app page with a data grid, which is summarizing your records and giving you the ability to create new, you know, edit existing, etc. Reminders, they don't exist in Leap. We need to move those over to Leap. They're in Domino Leap. A high request that we've had is a widget for multiple attachments. You know, so think of a drop zone widget where you could just simply take a handful of attachments and move them in, versus the attachment widget we have today, which is a single file, which can be really problematic if you want to allow multiple attachments. There's some things that we want to do to update the manage page, that first page that you come in. It's looking very dated. The themes, so that flat blue theme that we have, which is the default, that's looking very dated. We need to be able to update that. Full text search, including attachments. So this is a request that's actually coming from Domino customers. And the idea there is to be able to have a service that goes off to Domino and says, get me all the different records, which include this text string here, you know, including, you know, if they exist inside an attachment, and return it to me. So that's going to be coming. I mentioned accessibility fixes. We have a commitment to meeting some new accessibility laws, which are going to happen in Europe in, I believe it's 2025, maybe. I could be wrong. Maybe it's the end of 2024. And there's this big review of all the different vulnerabilities that we have when it comes to accessibility. I should say issues that we have with accessibility and fixing all those. Team authoring. So the idea of simultaneously you know, two editors in a Leap app and authoring, that's something we're working on. CMS integration. So the idea there is I can externalize my text strings. So the different labels that I have on my widgets, the text that I have in my text items on an app, to be able to externalize those and then determine which version of those strings I might want to bring in. That plays into multilingual quite nicely. It also plays into the whole idea that maybe this is part of a solution which is using a CMS, and what I want to do is maybe have legal language that periodically gets updated. And I don't want to go into 50 different apps to update it in 50 different apps. I just want to update it once and have it reflected in all those different apps automatically. You know, so kind of decoupling the strings from the app. And then the last one, which is a high request, is versioning. You can kind of do this manually today, but we really need to give users a way to manage versions of their app and roll back to a version if they need to. So a bunch of things in the works. You know, again, it's one leap. There's a few differences here and there, but it's one leap on two different platforms. So in summary, you know, citizen development, that's what we're after. Leap and MX, or I should say Leap is part of MX. You know, we talk a little bit about the rich text integration, you know, enhancements, quite a bit about the Leap deployment options, the new admin dashboard, and a bit about custom widgets and a few other nice things. Those are all my charts, my demo. You know, if you want to learn more about the product, you can always sign up for a trial. And this trial of Volt MX gives you access to both Leap and all of MX. So with that, I'll stop. And
Actually,
Graham, if
Marty,
you want to open it to
Marty,
questions.
Marty,
Yep.
before you stop, can you share the link to the sandbox again?
This one right here, this QR code.
Is that QR code? That's what points at the I want to say sandbox. Was that the right term?
Well, okay. So this QR code will give you this form, which you sign up, and then it's going to give you an account on the Leap Sandbox.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. That's what I was looking for.
But there's actually two sandboxes. I'm getting into more information than I should here. So there's this sandbox here, which I showed you before. Right? And this one I have set up so you can go in, you can download different apps and play with it. And the way that people would normally come into this is just opening up a browser here is because I want to come in as non-admin, and in this case you'd come in and if you here and you would see this, right? And you'd be able to run different applications, and you know, you
That
look at
was
the
what I was.
yeah.
That's what I was. Yeah, that's what I was going for. Just for people to be able to have a play. I know that there are some members of the community that have been quite vocal about the fact that we used to have the greenhouse back in the IBM days, and that was an opportunity to go and play. And I know you've been somewhat outspoken in the fact that there's been a sandbox for Leap applications for a good long time. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about that and had the opportunity.
But what we did was we added another sandbox. So if you fill out that MX trial form,
yeah.
Oh, you go to this sandbox. And notice it says HCL Elite Volt MX up on the left. They're actually running on the same instance of WebSphere.
Okay, good. That was what I was looking for.
Oh, and this one there's only 43 apps. Isn't that interesting?
It's just an infancy, right?
Well, what we want to do is when you sign up for MX, we want to give you access to both Leap and Foundry and Iris, and we want to be able to track who the user is and, you know, send out emails and that kind of stuff. The old way that we've done it, you know, coming in, this approach is just wide open, and it's a transient ID that you come in with. You know, you just fill out a form with your email address and your password, and I'm sorry, your email address and your name, and you just come in.
Yeah.
But either way is fine with me.
Okay, good.
So
that was what I was looking for.
leapsandbox.hclpmp.com.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to switch back over to me. All right, there we go. Okay, so question period. Reminder to just use the question panel to pop your question in, and we'll ask and answer and get them recorded in the video. So to get started, there was not so much a question as just a comment about the fact that Lufthansa example kind of dates back to the IBM days, but I imagine you wouldn't bring it up if they weren't still using it.
Yeah, I mean, they're using it more than ever. One of the things that's interesting about Leap, or what we used to call Forms Experience Builder, FEB, is it was bundled with connections, and it powered community surveys and connections. And there are some big customers that got an introduction to Forms Experience Builder through connections. Lufthansa was one of them, right? Lufthansa made the decision to drop connections. They decided to stay with Forms Experience Builder and Leap, and they continue to grow it. So it was extremely sticky there.
Right.
But it was I think the concept of connections, as a platform for all business users, which really established, what we called Forms Experience Builder at the time in Lufthansa. The product has grown, it's new features, and it's gotten better and easier, but still, it's the same concepts. So I think the example is very valid, and it shows the scale.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. It gives people some confirmation that, yeah, this can work for thousands of users.
Okay. Next question. Can you share some information about what's needed in terms of hardware and software to start using Leap internally? And I guess we would make the distinction between Domino Leap and what's bundled in Bolt Next.
Yeah, I think the hardware would probably be actually pretty similar. I'm not an expert in this area. I mean, if you have a modest Windows or Linux server, you don't need a ton.
Would you install Leap on the same server as Domino?
Domino Leap, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I mean, here I'm running it on my MacBook Pro just fine. I've got an old ThinkPad in my office that I'm running Ubuntu on, and I've got a Kubernetes style deployment there. It works just fine. Are there hundreds of users? No. But it really doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, and that's part of the question, is just to start. So a real basic machine is quite sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, there are other questions that get involved in this in terms of, and we've been kind of researching, okay, what exactly do we need to acquire from Google to run Leap on Cloud? And you've got some questions around, okay, how much redundancy do you want? I mean, if you want to support 99.9, then you probably need a high availability database. You need to be able to kind of switch over to a backup instance in where you do a maintenance. Kubernetes gives you that horizontal scaling, which is nice. But I think we're looking at maybe one processor, Kubernetes processor with I don't know, 8 gigs of RAM was sufficient for production deployment. And then the database, actually, with Leap itself, the database is the workhorse. In a lot of ways, you can think of the Leap app, which is running on Java, is kind of the conduit into the database, but it's the database that's the workhorse. And there you probably want to give it more resources or more consideration. Of course, the database in the Domino case, it's Domino.
Yep.
So, the more sort of thrashing and calling the Domino data, the more you're going to work that. And in the case of Leap, the database really needs to be co-located with the Leap application itself, because it's very chatty. So I'm not giving you specific numbers. I'd be glad to set whoever it is up with the right person to get more specific on that, but it's fairly modest what it takes.
Okay. Same or similar question. It says, for a Domino shop specifically, just wanting to make the distinction between Domino Leap and I guess regular Leap. I remember you had a slide that talked about downloading and installing Domino Leap versus not being able to buy Leap as a separate product anymore. So basically, the
Yeah.
question is, if I've got Domino, what am I downloading?
Well, if you have Domino Leap, but if you have Domino and you want Domino Leap, what you're doing is you're just downloading the install files in the executables for Domino Leap, and they get installed on top of Domino. All right, and then there's some post installation pieces that you need to address in the name and address book. Set up your Leap users. You know, you determine who are the Leap admins. Is there one? Are there a few? Who are the users that are able to build applications in Leap? Who are the end users? You know, maybe you want everybody to be able to build and use applications. Maybe you want to limit it. So you would set that up in Leap. You know, you'd also look at what sort of configuration settings do you want. Do you want to limit the use of JavaScript? Do you want to leave it wide open? Do you want to allow people to integrate with any URLs on the back end? Do you want to, you know, whitelist just certain ones? Are there entries in the service catalog you need to make, you know, et cetera? So those sort of things are considerations when you're setting it up.
Right.
But the download, you know, if you're Domino customer, is just it comes in a zip file. It's just all the things you want to then install on top of Domino. You can also download it, Domino Leap as a Docker container, and we give you the option of a sample organization to go along with that Domino container. So for my purposes of using Domino Leap on my laptop, I did that, and I just have desktop Docker, and I've got this renovations sample organization, which gives me a name and address book to start with, and works great. Just a simple command line, and you know, I can start the container, and it's just a matter of seconds before it starts up. Right. So that's a Domino. It's a Domino instance with Domino Leap, you know, already installed on it.
Cool. And I also picked up, which was news to me, that obviously Foundry now has the ability through the Domino REST APIs to talk to a Domino server. So if you're getting into the world of VoltMX and want to use Leap with Domino, that's completely possible now too. So that was interesting to hear. Okay, next question is, speaking of redundancy with Domino, can Leap make use of Domino clustering?
Yes, there is an article on how you can do high availability for Domino Leap, but that is available. That is possible.
Wonderful. All right, that's our total questions. I'll ask our audience if there are any others to pop them in real quick. But in the meantime, Marty, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today and sharing what's coming and what's possible today. So that's cool. I'm going to see no other questions here. I do know that Marty's on Discord, so certainly you can ask your questions in the OpenNTF Discord server, and we can make sure that we pass them along. Ooh, we got another question here. VoltMX license includes Domino Leap, correct?
No, VoltMX includes Leap. VoltMX Go gives you a choice of either Domino Leap or Leap.
Ah, okay. So it's VoltMX Go specifically.
Yes. Good.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. And again, reminder of the blogathon on OpenNTF Discord server. Please join us over there and carry on the conversation. Have a good day.
Thank you.